Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
I'm here. I'm alive. That's about all I can say.
Well, Happy New Year to those of you listening, because this is probably when this will be released. It'll be 2025.
Yeah, happy New Year to y'all. I hope y'all had a very Merry Christmas. If you can't tell, I got sick over Christmas, and I'm still fighting that off. And my whole family got sick, so it was a bit of a rough week in the Jones household.
Sounds
but
like
hopefully,
it.
Hopefully, it's all uphill from here, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to say?
Is it up or down? I don't know.
I don't know. I think
It's supposed to be better.
It's supposed to be better. That's what they say. But yeah. Anyway, so forgive me for my very, very froggy voice today. I'm gonna just do the best I can, and muddle through it. But it's New Year's today.
Mm-hmm.
What are we gonna talk about? We're gonna talk about like resolutions and stuff. Isn't that what you're supposed to talk about on New Year's?
I guess we're supposed to talk about a version of that, right? Like goal setting.
Goal setting. Goal setting. Are we setting goals or actually accomplishing them?
I think for some of us, you're going to continue working towards accomplishing them. I accomplished some big goals last year that were multi-year in the making,
Yeah.
And then some that I set last year, and not necessarily on New Year's either. I think I had a piece of paper down, folded up in my sock drawer with goals that I wrote dated in August. And then I got them all done by the end of the year, by today.
Yeah, you've hit some big PRs lately. But, so I'm curious. I know you're talking about lifting goals here. Did you have any resolutions, though, outside of fitness in 2024?
I embarked on a multi-year financial goal of getting myself out of student debt. And I started this January of 2021. It just happened to be January. It wasn't like, New Year's, right?
Right.
I had a couple good years there because a lot of online business picked up with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, I got an email in the beginning of the year, and it kind of showed a summary of my transactions in my business account, for the previous year. And 2020 was better than 2019, 2018, 2017, because, after, I'd say I was shot in March and April because the lockdowns hit. Yeah, no, at the end of April of 2020, things just got really busy. People started figuring out, well, shit, I want to work out, and the gyms are closed. So online business got busier, and then January. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember you couldn't buy workout equipment for anything. It was impossible to find.
Everybody bought it, yeah.
You wanted a rack, plates, bar. Nope.
Yeah, so it was funny because I remember when everything happened, I'm like, well, shit, I had savings. So I'm like, okay, I think I got a few months here. What the fuck's going on,
Yeah.
And then I'd say from April of 2020 to the end of 21, it's like a good year and a half, I was just slammed more than I've ever been. I don't know that I want to get that slammed again, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the end result was good. But I was really fucking busy. Like online coaching, like literally just breaking down workouts was like, and getting back to people for diets. It was like a 9-hour day, and I was able to do it. And I remember thinking to myself, I can do this for a little while,
Yeah.
But I didn't think I could do that. Yeah, no,
no.
definitely. And now things have calmed down, and I'm still in a good place, But I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I want to be that busy again, at least busy doing that,
Yeah, right.
So anyways, in January, I saw the transactions. I saw that I had made more, and then I kind of sat down and told myself, okay, well, make hay when it rains. This isn't going to last forever. And so let's get this debt paid off. So I don't have consumer debt. I didn't have consumer debt then. I had a little bit of business debt from the gym. When I opened the gym, I put some of the purchases on credit. So that was the first order of business. I paid off all the gym debt, which took me just a couple months. It wasn't a lot of money. And then once I got that taken care of, then I started directing my efforts at the student debt. So yeah, I paid for 2 degrees, a credential, and then the cost of living when I was doing my doctorate for the first year and a half that I lived here. I went off on my own 5 years ago, and been there ever since. And I have my gym, my little gym that serves as a local gym, a studio, my personal gym, and an office. So just been kind of doing that, but haven't really been able to invest tons into it because I was trying to pay off all that personal debt, which was mainly for my education. So they say I'm one of the few that does that. Especially ahead of schedule. I think I paid it in half the time that it typically takes. It's when I finished my master's in 11. We'll make that the baseline because PhD came later and that was for different expenses. But it's like a 20-year loan, I think, if you pay it standard. And I was done by 23, so 12 years since graduation. But then I really paid it down, most of it, in the last 4.
Yeah. Gave it the old debt snowball approach or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
From
I was mostly an Avalanche, but there was a few
Avalanche. There we go. Yeah.
I did the Avalanche. Dave Ramsey says doesn't work, but if you have the discipline, you can do it. I did it. It's not fun because some of those, I left all those loans individual. So every semester you get an individual loan. Some people consolidate it into one. I never did that. That way I could. It was quasi Dave Ramsey, because I had individual loans.
Yeah.
I could just, when I paid one off, I felt like, I got somewhere, right? Versus this
Right.
big number,
Right.
I just did it in the order of the interest, right? So like I had 3 loans. So during COVID, this was also one of the reasons that I had that fire under my ass. The loan interest rates were frozen at 0, from I think March of 2020 to I think September of 23. So I wanted to get that paid off before that freeze was up. However, I had 3 private loans that were a smaller portion of the balance, fortunately, and those were higher interest, so I paid those off first. And then there were 3 federal loans that were pre-2009 when the student loan program went direct from the feds. So like the old ones, they were federally backed, but they were issued by banks technically, but they were considered federal loans. Those carried interest during the pandemic. So the freeze did not apply to those. So then those were the second loans I paid off. So I paid those off next. And then after that, I just, I pretended that the interest was in effect and went in the order of the ones that were adding the most interest. And I, eventually got them all paid off. And once I got them all paid off, I got my car paid off. I think I underpaid taxes accidentally in 21 because it was just a jump in income that year. So I ended up paying that back as fast as I could so I didn't have to owe Uncle Sam money. And then I paid my truck off, and then I got my retirement caught up. And, now I'm on a pretty, steady budget. I have to deal with the typical issues a small business owner deals with of, fluctuating income. But I don't have these long-term liabilities.
Yeah.
These personal long-term liabilities weighing me down. So, if I have good months, I can, spend more on marketing or other things that'll help the business. If I have bad months, I can pull back. That's the nice thing. I can cut expenses because I don't have anything that's, requires me to pay large sums of money every month,
Right. Well, yeah, that's a big thing to check off. So well done there. My one resolution outside of, like fitness stuff for 2024 was much, much smaller. I think I've mentioned it on the show a couple of times, but I resolved to floss every day in 2024. And I'm happy to say that here we are at closing out the year, and I think my compliance rate is probably about 90%. The only times I haven't flossed are when I traveled and I didn't, I just didn't have time or a place to go pick up floss, or when I ran out. There's one time I ran out, and it was just like 2 weeks before I could get myself to the store to go buy more. So there you go. So I think my compliance rate, I'd say it's at least 90% for this year. So I'll call that a win, even if it wasn't exactly every day. It's now just part of my regular habits. It feels weird if I don't floss now, which is kind of the point that I wanted to get to. So, well, I was thinking about, when we're talking about resolutions and goal setting, I was trying to think about, what have we not said on our show thus far? we've talked a lot about goals. We've talked a lot about how, with fitness goals in particular, this is a long game. You can see big improvements in the short run. In short run, in this context, is 3 to 6 months. But the real gains, the real like physique and strength goals that most people want, those come over a period of years, right? And so we talked about that. I think the thing that I would like to leave with everyone today is when you're thinking about your goals for 2025, let's strip away those self-limiting beliefs that you have. And let's try something that you've never tried before and see how it goes. So, I'm talking to, if you're underweight, if you're skinny and you know it, and you'll know it because you've been listening to us and we've told you what body weights are underweight. Why not this year? Why not just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give myself permission to get up to 200 pounds. Or if you're a tall guy, I'm going to give myself permission this year to get up to 245 or 275. Why not? Why not? You can always go back down, right? But why not just change that factor that you have not changed yet? That's been limiting your progress. Why not change that one thing? Right? Why not sleep 8 hours a day this week? Or 8 hours a night. Why not sleep 8 hours a night this year? Why not? Whatever those things are that are holding you back, let's strip those away. That's what I want to talk about today.
Flossing is extremely important, dude. So when I first moved here, I had to get a deep clean, and the needle in the mouth thing, don't want that ever again.
Oh, yeah.
So that is my motivator to keep flossing, to avoid another deep cleaning.
Yeah, those are no fun.
I won't do it at night. My dentist wants me to floss at night. I won't fucking do it. And guess what? Those little measurements they take to see the gaps, or how thick the gums are, those have gotten smaller since I started flossing every day. So
yeah,
I don't know that the magnitude of difference from morning to night is going to be huge, given that where are they getting their data from when most people won't even fucking floss,
Right. I know. That was my whole thing is like, I don't care when or how often, like during the day. It's just, I floss every day now.
Yeah.
I don't floss multiple times a day, but I floss every day now. I didn't do that for years.
Yeah. So
that's a win for me.
So we talked about a couple non-lifting goals. I talked about a multi-year grind.
Yeah.
That fucking wore on me pretty fucking hard. I mean, if Dave Ramsey wants to invite me to his podcast, I'll go into detail, but it does not belong here because it's a different topic. But I had some short-term goals too. So last year, I'd say this kind of falls into the new year thing. It was the end of last year. I decided I wanted to train for strength again. I'd been doing that high rep bodybuilding stuff for a couple of years, and I wanted to go into fives. Now, remember when I was doing high reps, I was setting PRs at those high reps. So there was strength acquisition there. It was just a higher rep range, right? So I decided I wanted to bench 315. It was the only goal that I had left under a barbell that was, numeric and that I wanted. In 2020, I benched 310 and I could not get the last 5 pounds. And I went back and looked, and it's so funny how our bro egos are at the time. I'm like, I was so close. I wasn't even fucking close. I went back and looked in the video. I'm like, no, that wasn't going to lock out. I don't know why I spent like 2 months trying to lock that out. It wasn't happening. So 310 was, I guess, all I had that training cycle. I think with what I learned recently, I maybe would have done better if I peaked differently, but that's another story for another day. So anyways, I said I want to bench 315, and this price started around October of last year. And it lasted until December of this year. I think it happened this month. I think so. I think at the beginning of this month, I benched 315. Yes, people. Yeah. I benched 315 at the beginning of this month. So it took me 1 year and 2 months. So 14 months to bench 315. So I went into 2024 saying I want 315 by the end of the fucking year. And I'll get as heavy as I have to do it, And I wanted to wrap up this financial journey of mine by the end of this year, And I did that. And what was the other one? I think that was it. Oh, and then that's what it was. So I had 3 things that I wanted to get done this year. I wrote them down in August, but I went into the year with a couple of them pretty hard set. I wanted the financial goal I just discussed. I wanted that done by the end of the year. I wanted 315 bench pressed by the end of the year. And then at some point in all this, I wanted my cash reserves back to a higher amount where I used to kind of keep it before I got really into paying the stuff down. You know, the further I got down this rabbit hole, the thinner the tightrope I'd walk financially, because I just wanted to use as much as I could to pay it down. And I wouldn't recommend that if somebody were to ask me what to do there, because it got really fucking stressful. Thankfully, it worked out, but it just created a lot of stress because I just wanted it done by the end of this year. So I had those were my 3 objectives for this year. One was part of a longer term goal, and the other 2 were short term. You know, I wanted my cash to be at a certain level by the end of the year, and I wanted my muscular strength on the bench press to be at a certain level by the end of the year. But then some bonuses happened, you know, because I gained all that weight for the bench. The deadlift shot up like a rocket ship. You know, last year I hit my first deadlift PR in like 3 years. So I've got 470 for 5, October of last year. And then I couldn't get 475 until April of this year at the coaches conference, 2024. Then I couldn't get 480 at all. And then I reset back down to 415, started going up every week by 10 pounds. And while I was doing that, I let my body weight go up to 205. And once I got back to 465, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I went to 475. Well, shit, that's my last PR. That wasn't that bad. Then I went to 485, got that. Then I'm like, let me wait 2 weeks. It's getting hard. Then I tried to go to 495, missed it, waited 2 weeks, went to 490, got it. And then every 2 weeks thereafter, I kept going to up until this week I hit 505 for 5 on the deadlift, which is 40 pounds over where I had been kind of at since 2020. Yeah, I'd say 2020. I hit 465 for 5, and then I didn't hit a new 5 until 23, the end of 23, as part of the current training cycle. So I put fucking 40 pounds on the damn deadlift in 2024, essentially.
Right.
I mean, I guess 35 technically if you want to count that first PR at the end of 2023, but effectively I put 40 pounds on it this year, my 5RM.
Yeah, it's funny how for advanced lifters, how that tends to happen, right? Where it's just like you kind of stalled out effectively for long periods of time, and then you have these breakthroughs. Mm-hmm. It's rarely that you have these like long, uninterrupted, slow, predictable increases in your PRs, right? Like at your level, right? That happens earlier in your training for sure. Mm-hmm. But it tends to be these kind of like bursts. You know, you kind of break through and something you figure something out, or the stars align in the right way for you to make that progress. I think it's funny. But you know what you just said there, you let your body weight go up. And specifically, you let your body weight. I remember talking to you about this when it was the 315 that prompted it, right? Like you said, it's like, okay, all right, fine. You know what? I've tried everything else that I know how to do. I'll get as heavy as I need to. Fuck it, right? Because before you kind of were capping yourself off at like, well, you know, when I'm bulking, you know, I'm going to cap myself off at what, like 190 or 195, or I forget where you tended to like to hang around, but
195 was
kind of the top, right, if your limit. But then you're like, all right, fuck it. You know what? I don't care if I need to go to 225 to bench 315. I'll do it, and then go back down afterwards. So that's what I'm talking about when I said, you know, sort of self-limiting beliefs. That might be a little bit too harsh of a word in your case, but I think what it was is that you said, okay, I exhausted all of the programming things that I know how to do. I've adjusted every other parameter that I can possibly think of. Fuck it, let's just go with the body weight. And there's a lot of people out there who are missing much simpler, you know, aspects of their training, right? I think for a lot of people, it's not all of these minute sort of like variables of training that are the missing link to them making more progress, right? It's not that. It's not like, oh, if you would have close grip benched with this amount of tonnage versus, you know, versus standard bit. It's not that. It's for most people, they're missing something big, something basic and fundamental, right? And
Yep.
it's eating enough of the right kind of stuff,
Yep.
right? Eating enough carbs, eating enough protein, sleeping enough, right? Just simple stuff. It's not easy stuff, but simple stuff, right? Big fundamental things that if you can just get that out of the way, all of a sudden you can realize progress.
I'm curious to see where the hell my squat is because I've been squatting after I deadlift. And, well, this week I accidentally hit a squat PR. I've been squatting with the transformer bar set to low bar because I've been nursing this elbow tendonitis that I've had for almost 2 years. And it's down to the last maybe 5%. You know, it's there, not gone, but it's not bugging, you know. But when I bench heavy, for those of you who follow me, the left arm gets asymmetrical because that elbow shuts down, you know. So I'm trying to nurse the rest of it off so that I can maybe get a more symmetrical bench press long term, you know. But and anyhow, so I was squatting with a transformer bar set to low bar, and then this week after I deadlifted 505, I was set to squat 400 for 5. Well, I did it set to high bar, and I had no idea. So that was cool. I squatted 400 for 5, high bar on a transformer bar. And it was fucking hard, but I got it. So I'm curious to see where that goes when I start. I'm going to reset and just run it up, you know?
Yeah, artificially limiting your squat because of that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I don't care. I want the deadlift, and I don't really care where the squat lands, but I suspect there's a squat PR coming in all this too. Yeah, I don't know that my squat's going to go up that much from all this because this kind of goes back to when I started doing the lifts. So I started bench pressing when I was 15. So as you can see, you know, gaining weight, it got me over the hump. I got the last 5 pounds, but I only put 5 pounds on the lift from doing that versus 40 pounds on the deadlift. Now it's a bigger lift with more muscle mass, short range of motion, lots of muscles, but I'm more novice at it. I only started training the deadlift seriously 11 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
When I went into starting strength and started training primarily for strength, my squat and deadlift were 315. I think maybe 320 on the deadlift, you know, but they were both 315. And, you know, a 315 squat for some guys, you got to work for that, you know? It's not super heavy, you know, but I know guys that they have to work to get up there, you know? I think I probably hit that the first time ever when I was 19. It may have been high, you know. Then I think in my 20s, I started really focusing on depth. So I have a video of my last squat before seriously strength training, and I hit 315 clean, below parallel, just ugly, you know, not great form. But then a 315 deadlift is bullshit, you know. It's bullshit. You know, I was benching in the mid twos. I squatted 315. I think I was pressing 135 or something like that. And the deadlift was undertrained. So I bring this up because I never trained the deadlift real heavy, whereas like I'd gained weight and squatted heavy in the past. I'd gained weight and benched in the past many times, and I used to do a lot more bench volume. And that was one lift where the technique wasn't so far off like it was on the other two, the squat and the deadlift. And the bench press, I was touching my chest. I was doing full range of motion. I wasn't using my legs very much. I wasn't thinking about my back very much. But, the arms and shoulders were going through the full range of motion ever since I was 15. So I'm probably the most advanced at the bench press, you know, even though these jerk offs on the internet say, oh, 315 is not heavy. You know, well, motherfuckers, it doesn't grow on trees. You go to a gym, most guys aren't even benching 225, you know?
Right. Yep.
So whatever, you know, I have long arms. I don't have naturally big muscle bellies, and I'm not going to train my way to like 16, 17 inch arms. It's not going to fucking happen. You know, I can fill them out, but you're not going to train your way to like, you know, putting 5 inches on your arms, not without drugs, you know? So I'm limited on that lift. So I had to bust my ass for 315. Can I get more? Probably. If I can keep the fucking tendonitis at bay, I can probably get more on it for sure. But, you know, I'm pretty advanced at that lift. I've been doing it for 25 years. 25 years I've been under a bar benching at some capacity. And, you know, in college I did a bunch of volume, different angles, you know, like incline, a flat bench, then dumbbells and flies, you know, like I'm just pretty experienced in that lift. So the weight gain didn't do much there. On the squat, it's hard to measure because I was squatting after my deadlift. but I would venture to guess that I'm not going to see as much improvement on that lift, primarily because I've been squatting since I was 18,
Yeah. Right.
And I came into strength training with not a terrible squat, not a great squat, but not a terrible squat, squatting 315. I think I think 260 for 5, 265 for 5, something like that. I'd say if I was focusing on the press, I think that with this extra size, I'd probably get a press PR, probably a bigger press PR than a bench PR, because I've only been at that lift for 14 years. In the last 3 years, I've been primarily benching. So I probably spent 10 years on that lift, seriously, 10, 11 years,
So, I think the thing that I want to get across is that for most people out there, like I said, it's usually the simple things that are holding them back. And I think that's what, if you're looking at a goal that you have, most people have goals that are outcome oriented, right? Like they want certain numbers on a lift, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Or they might have an outcome that's like a little bit more soft or nebulous, like a physique outcome, so it doesn't necessarily have a hard definition, like a quantitative definition, mm-hmm. but there are measurable things about it, right? Smaller mm-hmm. waistline, subjectively larger muscles, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so most people have this outcome-related goal, but where they fall short is changing the lifestyle factors that need to be changed to support that goal. I don't generally run into people who have a problem doing the training. Right now, there's a few out there who are like, oh, I want to do this, and then they miss half their workouts. If that's you, if you're missing workouts every week, like if you miss a workout, if you regularly miss your workouts every week, like even if it's just one workout out of 4, let's say, then that's just an obvious one, right? You've got to create a schedule that works for you, where you can have compliance first and get all your workouts in. But for the most part, I'd say that the vast majority of the people that I work with, compliance is not the issue with training, right? They do the training. The hard part is all the stuff that happens outside of my influence, which is diet and recovery. And this is where a lot of people that are spinning their wheels and not accomplishing their goals are getting stuck. Is they're not eating enough, they're not eating the right things, and they're not sleeping enough and not recovering enough. And so I think that's worth putting most of your attention when it comes to reaching your goals, because the programming is fairly simple. Frankly, if your program calls for you to add weight to the bar on a regular basis and you just stick with it, in other words, you don't miss workouts, you're going to make progress. Like, even if you have fairly shitty programming, you're going to make progress if it calls for adding weight to the bar regularly and then you regularly show up. So programming is probably the part that you need to take, put the least of your attention on, and put most of your attention on the lifestyle factors and getting those nailed down. And there's a big gap between knowing what you need to do and actually implementing in your life. And that's where I think the vast majority of people fall short when it comes to reaching goals.
Well, people like to major in the minors, as they say.
Right. Yep.
It's, programming's interesting. There's a lot of different things you can do. And
yes. And I'm not saying programming doesn't matter, because it does matter. And I believe it matters. I see it matter, but it matters a lot less than most people think it does. I've seen people with fairly shitty programming that are just really, that are really have a high compliance rate and work hard, and they keep adding weight to the bar. And you know what? They keep getting stronger. Even though I would have done it differently and maybe a little bit more efficiently, it's not like they would have made enormously more progress with my way than they would doing it their suboptimal way.
Well, 90% of anything is just showing up, walking through the door and making an attempt, and I try to explain that to people. When you do something new, and this is important for people thinking about what they want to do next year, when you're embarking on a journey to do something new, there's the initial excitement, the honeymoon phase. Things kind of go well initially. If you're a brand new lifter, it's the novice effect. But I think that some version of that applies to anything that you start doing that you weren't doing before. But then a lot of it becomes very routine. You're showing up, you're doing something rather mundane, but then you're making it a little bit harder, over time. Just showing up, doing the work, clocking in, clocking out, repeating is 95% of it, I would say,
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
If every day's a new day and you're doing all these different exciting things all the time, what you'll usually find is that that you're stagnant when you start looking at the measurables, because the more you deviate from the path, you're not investing into things that are moving you forward. You're now indulging in distractions because you don't want to face the boring nature of that journey.
Yeah, this is the classic example of that is CrossFit, right? Like, this is less the case now because CrossFit is less popular, but I remember a few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, I ran into a fair amount of CrossFitters. I've never coached a whole bunch, but I ran into a fair amount of CrossFitters. And the typical story with them is the ones that found strength training did CrossFit for usually somewhere between 1 to 3 years, and at first saw great progress, and then sometime around year 2 of doing CrossFit, they stalled out real hard, and then sometime between year 2 and year 3 they got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people that would come to me because they discovered barbell training in a more structured way and wanted a coach to help them with it, they were the ones who were maybe decent at CrossFit but not great at it, or they were bad at CrossFit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, these weren't the natural athletes. These are people who had a fairly low baseline. That CrossFit helped them a little bit for about a year, and then they stalled out real hard, and they got frustrated that they still couldn't, RX the workouts, as they say, right? They still couldn't perform the workouts as intended with the, whatever weight that they're snatching for time, or, whatever crazy workout they're doing that day. They always had to scale things down. And that's the classic example, that they're constantly doing new things, and they're never actually spending that time in the trenches, just kind of plodding along, regularly adding weight to the bar, so they never ever get to that level of performance where they can actually do the workouts as intended. On the other hand, the people who do well with CrossFit tend to be the natural athletes who just had their baseline was high enough to be able to do the workouts as written without having to scale them down. And of course, they're like, CrossFit's great. What are you talking about? It's like, well, yeah, but they have a different experience than the average person doing it.
It's the same.
And then they get hurt too. Everybody gets hurt, but
it's the same problem bodybuilding suffers from. The guys that do really well with it already have the foundation for it.
Exactly.
And they follow these programs that have been passed down for decades, where they're doing a ton of volume, a ton of exercises, and in some cases taking a bunch of roids. And then bodybuilding's great as a result. But then when you or I do it, at the very least, there's tendinitis. You know what? For them, there's tendinitis. Sometimes they talk about it, sometimes they don't. They lose their flexibility and they get tendinitis. It just happens. In fact, I struggled to press when I was doing hypertrophy work because all the benching and the tricep work and the bicep work made me so fucking tight. When I was pressing, it was the first time ever I had problems locking out. It was hard to shrug out my press, and I knew it was because of all the isolation stuff I was doing and all the volume too. You're doing a lot of reps, and I think things just get tight. So you always hear about these guys are like, oh, I can't get in this position or I can't get in that position. But then they don't really highlight that as a potential risk of what they're doing. And we always say these guys are non-functional athletes. Well, no, we don't call them athletes. They're non-functional lifters. Who compete in a contest, a beauty contest. That's what it is, essentially. It's their idea of beauty. It's a beauty contest, but it requires them to lift to achieve the physique that they're being judged against. Right. Um, but we say they're non-functional. They can get pissed off all they want, but then at the same time, they're going to tell you that one guy said he can't press anymore. Other guys, they can't back squat anymore. Like they lose a lot of flexibility because of the way they're training. So that's what what you said about CrossFit. I'd say that's true about bodybuilding.
Yeah, right.
They get away with it because they're built well and can get away with it. But when we don't talk to elite athletes. We don't talk to people that are gifted for lifting. We're talking to, the IT guy that works 40 hours a week, has never done a sport, and whose baseline squat is probably 95 pounds, maybe 135,
Right.
And
exactly.
he's gonna fight hard to squat 300,
Yeah.
And
that guy's
these guys
not going to be doing.
No, and those guys are higher in numbers than the mediocre power lifter that squats 500.
That's right.
Sorry,
yes.
or even
higher numbers. Way higher numbers.
Yeah. So these guys, these dickbags that sit there and say, "Oh, I benched 315 when I was 18." Well, good for you, dude. You're not the majority, and you clearly don't train people.
Yeah, they're a tiny percentage. 315 won't even get you golf claps in a local powerlifting meet, but
no.
That you're still in a very, very tiny percentage of the population that can do that.
Yeah, you don't see that at commercial gyms. I mean, you see it at commercial gyms, but not on a regular basis from 1 in 2 members.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Like it's like probably 1 in 100 members can do that. At a commercial gym, maybe higher.
So I'm going to steal something from another company that I work with. I produce a few podcasts for this company called YNAB. You Need a Budget. It is they're like an online, how would I describe them? They sell a really clever software for managing your money, but really what they are is it's a company that sells a method for managing your finances. It's a lot like the Starting Strength linear progression in a way. Like they basically have these 4 rules of what to do with your money, and you follow these 4 rules. And it's sort of like the first principles of Starting Strength, why do we lift? We want to train the most muscle mass over the greatest effective range of motion so we can get stronger, as quickly as possible, right? So it's kind of fulfills these sort of foundational principles of managing your money. And then they just bundle that with this nice, looking, clever, sleek looking software for actually implementing those rules. But the owner or the founder of the company on his podcast said recently, try this as a sort of goal setting exercise before you start writing down that, your goals on a sheet of paper for 2025. Try this as a little exercise. Think about the things you want to do, because you already got an idea of what those goals are going to be, right? Think about the things you want to do. Now, imagine that money is no object. You are not limited by funds when it comes to pursuing your goals in 2025. How does that change your vision of accomplishing those goals? Right? So, let's think about that. If you had all the money in the world, what would you want to do with your fitness? Like, what are the kinds of things you want to do? Like, so, I can think off the top of my head, I might say something like, oh, okay, well, I'd want to train 4 times a week. And then I'd want to make sure I'm training these lifts. Okay, cool. And then I want to, I want to sleep 8 to 9 hours a day to maximize my recovery. Okay, cool. I want to eat, I definitely want to eat 200 grams of protein a day. I want to eat 300 grams of carbs, but I want to make sure all my food is very high quality, organic. I want to eat like well-balanced meals, plenty of fiber, plenty of fruits and vegetables. Okay, so you just go on and on through the list of things. Like I think most people listening to this podcast, the basics of what you ought to be doing. If you don't, go back and listen to the other 88 episodes of this podcast, and you'll have a real good foundation. But just imagine all those things that you would do in a perfect world where you were unlimited by money, and I would say in our context also unlimited by time and attention. Okay, think about those things that come up when you do that. I just listed some of them off, like sleeping, eating well. Those are the things you can put the actual resources that you have, which are limited. Those are the things you can put your attention towards, right? In the YNAB terms, they would say that's where you want to put your money. That's where you want to go spend on things, right? Is how you visualize yourself living day to day. Well, in fitness terms, we could say the same thing. Like you want to spend your attention and your time and maybe your money too on those things that you identified in this little vision exercise, right? So you're visualizing what life would be like day to day in your perfect fitness regimen and identifying what those things are. Okay, now walk it back to real life and say, well, what am I not doing right now? And how can I go spend my attention on that?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you have an economic situation in your life, not a financial one necessarily, but you only have so much time. You only have so many resources,
Right.
And you have to start there. What has to get done, no matter what has to get done. You allocate time, kind of like you would allocate money if you're doing a budget. And then you look at the other things you're doing. What can I cut, And then how much time do I have left to allocate to the gym,
Right. And I would say
is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and I would say that the thing though is we're not looking at cutting yet. We're not thinking about cutting at all. We're looking at how do I spend more time doing the things that I want that are going to get me towards my goals. So I'll make it a little more concrete for you. So let's say that you think about this and you're going through like what are the things you would do in this perfect fitness regimen you have, and you come across that I would be sleeping 8 to 9 hours a day. Okay, cool. And then you go back to real life and you're like, what am I actually sleeping? You're like, I'm sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night. Okay, well, that's where you can spend your resources that you have on improving your fitness, is figuring out how do I get more sleep than 5 to 6 hours a night. It's probably not buying a template with a new program for you. Right? That's probably not where you want to spend your resources this year, or even hiring a coach. It's let's figure out how to get more sleep. Why are you only sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night? Is it habits at night that are holding you back? Are you spending a lot of time at night watching television or doom scrolling on your phone? Or do you just have so many responsibilities you have to knock out after work that you don't have any time until the very end of the night to wind down and go to sleep? So that's pushing your bedtime out too late. Okay, I don't know. That's just things you got to go through in this exercise here. But maybe let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's not bad habits for you. Maybe it's just like you have so much shit to do that it's pushing your bedtime out later and later and later, and therefore you're never getting the amount of sleep that you really know you ought to be. Okay, well, how about assigning some money to that problem? What could you do to automate something in your life, or pay something to take care of something in your life, or rearrange your circumstances by spending some money so that you don't have a whole bunch of work to do when you get home, and you can actually wind down for bed at a more reasonable time and therefore get more sleep? So that's what I'm talking about. Is finding those areas where you can spend more of your time and energy, and maybe even more of your money, in order to make your goals happen. And we're not talking about cutting anything. It just happens by nature. This is like when we talk about diet, for a lot of people, it's easier to eat more of the good stuff than it is to cut out the bad stuff, right? And for a lot of people,
Right.
you eat more and more of the good stuff, and you just we don't even talk about it, but you start cutting out the bad stuff. You're
just
crowding
happens.
it out, right? We're doing that with our time and energy here. This is how you can think about getting to your goals in a better way this year.
Yeah, 100%. I've already thought about it for this year. There's a couple things I want to do. I want to peak this deadlift properly. And I think if I play my cards right, I'm going to either get damn close to 585, which is
Yeah.
6 plates on each side. For those of you who are unaware of why
Yeah,
that
that's
number is
right.
significant. Yeah,
It
6
is,
plates,
yes.
bro. And it's like about 80. I'm at 86% now. So
Yeah, yeah.
for a set of 5, I've pulled 80. I pulled 87% of my 1RM one training cycle for 5. And then I had to travel. So I think there was a little bit left that I wasn't able to get. So I think I'm like right there where like if I do pull 585, it's going to be no bullshit 1RM most likely, you know?
Right.
But it's going to, I'm having to like put my thinking cap on here and I've talked to some colleagues about how to do this because I have not been the best at peaking when I've done it on my own. I did it with a coach 6.5 years ago when I pulled 500 for the first time. And that was the one time where my max was way ahead of my 5. And
Right.
lo and behold, I wasn't the one who did that, When I've done it, I've gotten fairly close, but not quite that wide. So I think I'm always going into my test week with carrying fatigue. So I'm hoping this run I can do it right and get that 585 to kick the year off. So probably
It's
first
hard.
quarter of next year. Yeah.
It is hard to peak yourself. I have not done a great job either when I've
No, my
handled
5's
myself.
been like 90, I think 91% of my max when I've done it myself because I'm just still tired.
I think what it is, you just identified it, is that for when you're trying to peak yourself, I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of being like, I'm not doing enough as you're bringing the stress down. And when I've peaked my lifters the best, I have them doing shockingly little the week before the meet. Now, a month before the meet, they're dying. And then a week before the meet, it's like they're barely even lifting. But then they walk onto the platform and they're super fresh. And that's some of the best PRs I've been able to manifest for people. But see, if I'm there and I'm a week before my meet or even just my 1RM attempt, I'll be sitting there and I'll just do like maybe a couple doubles on the squat and be like, that can't be enough. It just can't be enough. And then end up doing too much, and then you blow it because you're too fatigued, too tired.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do yourself.
That's been my problem. So,
Yeah.
I want to pull 585. Then when that's done, I need to pull my body weight back down to where I kind of sit normally in the like 180s probably.
Yeah.
So those are like the two immediate things. And then, I have some financial goals. I want to keep building on my cash reserve, try to make it bigger and just keep doing what I'm doing. And, then I have some business goals that are still kind of taking shape. I'm going to probably put up more videos this year than last year. But the big thing is, on the fitness side, I want to see what I got in me on the deadlift. I'm going to do it on the squat too, of course. And then trim the weight back down. I don't want to stay at 208. You guys, you don't stay here permanently. Yeah,
That's right.
You leverage the size, literally and metaphorically, to lift heavier weights. And then you peel it back. It's not a permanent situation. You do it when it makes sense. If you're not chasing PRs, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense,
Right.
But if you're trying to grow and get stronger, it makes sense. So, I'm over it. I don't really necessarily want to run another training cycle at this body weight and try and get closer to 600, at least not right now. Maybe that'll come later,
Yeah, you probably, and at some point you have to start thinking about like longevity where you're like, if you stack too many of those really intense training cycles on top of each other, you just start breaking down.
Yeah.
And you gotta take some time,
I mean, we're going on a year and a half of this shit, where I've just been
that's a long,
pounding
long
my
time.
fucking body. Yeah.
I feel, for sure. I think that's something I've been thinking about is like, okay, I've gotten myself, I've clawed my way back to a respectable level of strength with my squat. My deadlift isn't where it needs to be, but I am pulling in the 400s and for sets across on, when I'm doing my heavy pulls, which are doubles right now. I'm pulling 420 for doubles. It's not great, but it's something. And I think that given my fatigue levels, I probably have a 405 for 5 pull in me if I was actually fresh. I've been experiencing a lot of fatigue from my squat bleeding over to my deadlift lately. But, I've thought about, it's like, okay, well, I have a PR in sight that I don't know if I'm going to be able to make between now and when our second child arrives. So we'll see. I'm going to try anyway. But if it doesn't happen, then I'm not really going to be in the best position for the rest of this year to chase strength numbers, because my recovery resources are not going to go up in the near future. They're only going to go down. So my goal this year, I haven't fully fleshed it out, but it's basically okay, how do I hold on to most of these gains that I've had, where I'm squatting in the mid 300s for fives, where I'm pulling in the 400s for five, and I'm benching in the mid twos for fives, and I'd like to get up in the higher twos for fives, and I'm pressing in the high hundreds, like 185 to 200 for fives. Right? Like how do I keep that level of strength, or pretty close to it, while giving my body a little bit of a break from the higher intensity lifting, where I'm pushing my doubles and triples and that kind of stuff, because that seems to be just taking more and more out of me as we've gotten towards the end of the year. And I think for me, that's going to be finding some stuff outside of lifting to go do. To do a little bit more just general activity, conditioning. I might go do yoga again this year. And mainly because I enjoy it. I used to do yoga several years ago pretty regularly, and I've fallen out of the habit. But one of the things I like about it is it's easy to find a class, and you can just drop in, and someone tells you everything you need to do for an hour, and you go home. And that's where I'm looking to spend some of my money and my resources on, is paying people to tell me what to do for my general activity. So I don't have to think about it. I just show up and then do it. Because I found the last couple of years my attention span to organize new things in my training, like I know strength training inside and out because I do it all the time. I do it every day. It's not too hard for me to design my own strength program. Fine. But if I want to get more creative and branch out and do something else, my brain is so weighed down by everything else that I have to do in life that I don't want to think about it. I don't want to come up with some sort of, like calisthenics program, or just, some sort of activity, physical activity. I don't want to come up with my own program. I'd rather just pay somebody to do it for me. And the easiest way for me is just drop into a class. So I found a studio that's pretty close to the house, so it wouldn't be a far drive. And I think I could reasonably get away once a week to do that. And so, as I get a better idea of what those goals will look like in more concrete terms over the next week or two, I'm gonna write down those things, like how I'm going to make it happen, like sign up for class once a week, go for a hike with my son once a week. I can do that. And that gets me outside and staying active, and while giving me the opportunity to pull back the lifting a little bit and give my body a little more time to recover. So I don't know if any of that made any sense, because I'm sick, and it's almost 1 a.m. here, but I hope some of those things make it a little easier for you to think about your goals this year and reach them.
One step at a time, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
All right, man. Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com or on Instagram at @the_Robert_Santana. You can find the gym here in Phoenix off 32nd Street and Broadway, just south of Sky Harbor Airport in the South Mountain Village. We offer gym memberships and one-on-one training. And you can find us on YouTube at weights @weights_and_plates, youtube.com/@weights_and_plates. And the gym is also on Instagram at weights_and_plates. So, yeah, let's kick off the new year. And I think, Trent, you have an announcement, right?
Yeah. So this will be my last episode on the podcast. I'm going to be stepping away in 2025. And that's to pursue other goals, since we're talking about goals here. yeah, I have a number of other things I want to pursue, and also we have a baby coming in 6 weeks if it comes on
Congrats.
time. Thank you. You never know. Sometimes it come early, sometimes come a little later. But yeah, if all things go to plan, then in about 6 weeks we'll have a baby here, and that'll make 2. And yeah, and then so I just need to take some time to make sure I'm there for my families at the time when we normally record podcasts, and also give myself a chance to pursue some other goals outside of this coaching thing that we do. But if you want to find me, keep track of me, you'll always find me lifting on Instagram. I'm at marmalade_cream on Instagram. If you're interested in online coaching, I do that. You can find me at jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com. Just send me an email and we can talk. And then if you're interested in any of my audio production work, I've talked to some people actually from this podcast that ended up wanting like custom music tracks or even audio production work for their own podcast. I do that, and you can find my website at www.marmaladecream.com. All right. Well, I was about to say we'll see you again in a couple weeks, but I won't.
I will.
Santana will see you again in a couple weeks. All right, take care. Happy New Year.